Observing wild animals in the forest is not necessarily easy. Some species are more visible than the others. Most forest species are shy, some are nocturnal, some naturally occur in low densities and thus provide only fleeting glimpse or may be rarely seen. Dense forest vegetation, topographical obstruction and natural camouflage of animals further reduce the sighting success considerably. Most wild animals, however, leave clues of their presence which at times are very helpful. Vishwas Savarkar, who heads the Faculty of Wildlife Management at WII, firmly believes in the utility of such clues for field personnel. Mr. Savarkar, what are these clues and why are they important? Could you elaborate?
You're right. Most wild animals leave some signs, and these are signatures in the wild with a lot of hidden messages. Considering their nature, they can be grouped into various categories such as footprints, droppings, feeding signs, kills, burrows and wallows, fallen fur, skeleton remains and characteristic shelters and nests, etc. Vocalization and smells are also integral to these signatures, but these are short-lived, momentary, but nevertheless they are very important.
Sir, how are they useful?
The utility depends on what the sign is. Scientific interpretation can generate information of considerable value, say on the species, its identity, its distribution, its behavior, habit and habitat, which in turn support managerial decisions. Besides, these make very considerable contribution to natural history.
It seems to me that considerable skill is necessary to detect and then interpret these signatures. How would a field person gain such ability, and could you demonstrate and interpret some of these signatures?
It's indeed a matter of acquiring the necessary skill. All faculties of sensory perception need to be honed to a very sharp edge. It's not difficult really. However, patience and continuous practice is absolutely essential in the field. In fact, the practice never stops. A person in the field can keep looking at these signatures while whatever other job he is doing. Now there are lots of learning materials which are available, such as notes, slides, audio and video tapes which are being developed. The skill is important for all cadres of officials who work in the field, and I will illustrate this statement. This is a foot impression or a pug mark of a tiger. Individual tigers can be recognized from differences in the morphology of the footprint. These are often subtle, hence considerable field practice is necessary. Just the footprint alone cannot serve the purpose, but a set of footprints left by a walking tiger can reveal the individuality of a particular tiger. For example, the pattern and sequence of the footfall. The efficiency of reading these signatures is of course the quality of the substrate and soil condition. Hard, even ground with a thin film of overlaid soil or a firm sandy substrate gives an ideal condition to obtain footprints with clarity and true to size. The tiger has now walked on a surface which has loose sandy soil. It is possible to recognize the tiger pug mark, but the details or the definition that is necessary to identify the individual is completely lost. This pug mark has the same form as that of the tiger, but is almost half the size in comparison. This is a pug mark of an adult leopard. Leopards are considerably smaller than tigers, and the size of the adult leopard footprint is almost as big as that of a tiger cub, which would be around 4 months old. It is possible to discriminate between the pug mark of an adult leopard and a tiger cub, but this is not being discussed here. Prints can be lifted from the ground and made into permanent record. I need not belabor this point. The technique is integrated into the methodology for estimating tiger population, popularly called the pug mark method. A square piece of glass is kept over the pug mark without touching it, and looking at the print vertically through the glass and without shifting the position of the eyes, the well-defined edges of the print are traced on the glass, and then this is transferred on a tracing paper, which then becomes a permanent record. An important point must be made. It's not just tracing mechanically, but tracing with understanding of the morphology of the specific print. Hence, constant practice is needed to train the eye with reference to all kinds of substrates and large number of pug marks. Subtle nuances are critically important. The footprint in the frame is much smaller, just the size of the top of a ball pen, and you see 5 toes. The heel of the footprint has various ridges and notches. This belongs to another common animal which is often ignored, the small Indian civet, a widely distributed species in all the dry and moist deciduous forests, usually active during the daytime but seldom seen because it occurs in low densities. Another animal which can easily be recognized by its characteristic footprint is the sloth bear. In fact, all the 3 species of the bears in India, the brown bear, the black Himalayan bear, which occurs in the Himalaya, and the sloth bear in peninsular India, have the same kind of basic pug mark morphology. This is the front footprint of the sloth bear. The pad is compact with all the 5 toes registered. In front of the toes, you see the sharp marks of the curved claws. The hind footprint of the bear almost resembles the print of a human foot, that of a person with a flat arch. To make a point, the pug mark of the front and hind feet are distinctly different in case of bears. This has an added advantage in identifying a specific individual. There are characteristics of 2 prints to compare rather than only one. Here the bear has walked on a slushy ground. It has slipped in the mud. You can say it is a bear, but cannot determine the individual identity as the definition is lost. Footprints in the mud may look impressive, but they are not useful for ascertaining individual identities as they are invariably distorted. Another animal which is very common and widely distributed but seldom seen because of its crepuscular and nocturnal habit and occurrence in low densities is the hyena. Hyena is broadly categorized into the dog family. The morphology of the footprint conforms generally to the footprint of a dog, but it is materially different than other species which are included in this group. For example, the wild dog, the jackal, or the fox. The difference appears in the shape of the pad. One lobe is small and one lobe is distinctly much larger, giving the whole pad a rather eccentric shape. Thus, the footprint of a hyena stands out. The Indian porcupine has distinctive footprints. They are longish with sharp 4 toes usually seen with claw marks. In case of a large adult porcupine, the quills grow very long, arch over its back, and trail along the ground. A substrate with a layer of fine soil or dust will exhibit an array of furrows or drag marks of the quills, but it is not a necessary accompaniment to the footprints. The footprint has many lobes and indentations. These are characteristic of the footprint of the species. Here the porcupine has walked on a sandy surface. The species can barely be recognized. Most of the details are lost. With continuous practice, the skill is developed to a stage where it is possible to read such signs on surfaces much worse than seen here. An animal which is commonly active near water bodies is the otter. Its footprint cannot be mistaken for any other animal. The foot has a distinct heel, extended toes with some kind of a webbing. Crocodiles are also found near water bodies and such appropriate habitats. Their footprints are sharp and deep, especially on sandy or muddy surfaces. The footprint here is in mud with solid consistency but still yielding. This has allowed the impression of the scales on the sole of the foot of the animal to register very clearly. Hoof prints belong to ungulates, and we will consider animals with cloven hoofs. The largest deer in India is the sambar. The footprint is fairly sharp and long and has a fair breadth. In some of the other deer, the hoof print can be much more linear. It's necessary to keep relative sizes in mind. This one is decidedly a more linear hoof print with both the edges of the hoof very sharp and the length is markedly smaller than that of the sambar. This is the typical hoof print of an adult spotted deer or cheetal. In case of hoofed animals, only the adults compare well. The younger animals usually lose their specific identity. A small deer in the forest is the barking deer. Barking deer almost shares the habitat with the sambar, lives in thick forests, has very small but very sharp hooves. The sharpness is very well defined in this picture. We are now changing the group of species. There are some irregularly placed footprints here, but toes and heel marks can be clearly seen. They are fairly common but mostly ignored. These belong to a mongoose. It will not be possible to state which species it is. The level of information is limited. This, of course, happens with several other species. An animal most commonly seen in evenings and in the beam of lights of your vehicle in the forest at night and along village environs is the common hare, popularly called the rabbit. India does not have any rabbits in the wild, however, but only hares, which are taxonomically different species. They run in an irregular manner and leave behind foot impressions which look scattered. Footprints have very little detail. They in fact look like smudges. This is a typical bird track and has limited information. Species like the peafowl or the great Indian bustard can be identified by their footprints or tracks. We move on to a different set of signatures, very subtle, that call for sharp observational capability. We will address the different paths and routes that animals select as their travel areas. Animals require some safety while they are traveling. Some species are more sensitive to this requirement than some of the others. They are also creatures of habit in the sense that they like to follow definite traditional paths, and these paths are usually discreetly marked in the forest. In the middle of the vegetation, a sort of a blank space is seen. This is an entry to an animal trail. These are not often obvious. The depressed tussocks of grass or fallen bunch of grasses reveal that an animal has either lain here or has been walking along this place. So those are the kind of signs that help you in actually leading to a place where an animal might have gone. But these signs do not really tell you what the animal was, what species it is. These are several signatures which you have to add together in order to reach the basic objective.